The final wave of Mario Kart 8 Booster Course Pass DLC has been released, which means there are now 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And naturally, that means everyone has to rank them all. And yeah, a lot of people are doing this ranking. I'm not naive to think I'm the only one to do this giant ranking of all 96 courses in the game. So watching this video means a lot. I really do appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to watch this specific ranking and my personal opinions and hearing what I have to say, along with, of course, all these other great videos that are being made at this point in time. And yeah, all these videos are going to have different opinions, including my own. So everything I say in this video is going to be a different opinion than every other YouTuber, and specifically you guys as well. No one is going to agree 1000% with my list, but that's what makes it so fun. So with all that being said, hopefully we can all kind of agree to disagree and have a really good fun time with it, and we can just have a really natural and fun conversation in the comments down below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with my least favorite track in the entire game, and of course work up to the best tracks in all of Mario Kart history. No surprises here, Toad Circuit is my personal least favorite track in the entire game. This one is just visually so poorly designed. It looks really rough, and the track itself is perfectly fine. Like, it just seems even more lackluster than most lackluster Mario Kart courses. It's just very bland, and of course that puts it at the very bottom of the list. And the one track that does look visually worse than Toad Circuit is Mario Circuit 3 from the Super Nintendo. This one is just very bland, almost tempted to put it worse than Toad Circuit, but it does have that one turn that's kind of really hard to hit and actually kind of fun when you do pull it off. So there is at least something happening here, which is kind of exciting, but for the most part, this just seems like they gave up on the Super Nintendo courses and just made them so visually poor and bland. Considering how lame this track is, I was actually really pulling for it to come back in the Booster Course Pass, because it actually had a really cool feature in the original release where the sun would actually set and get lower throughout each lap. For some reason, that's not here in the Nintendo Switch version at all. It just is a very static kind of sunset here, and it's really bland because of that. The good news is that we're out of the F tier. However, we're still talking about tracks I don't particularly like, and I don't know if this is a hot take to say I really am not a fan of this track at all, but this is just a circle with a really weird track course design and layout. I'm just personally not a fan of it. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I really don't enjoy this track really at all, which is strange because it is one of the few newer tracks that was released in the Booster Course Pass, and this one's just kind of a dud. Maybe I just hate Ice Cream and Whimsy and Wonder, I don't know, but for some reason it just does not hit for me at all. Apparently this is a pretty rare opinion to have, but I am not a fan of how Sky Garden turned out in this game, like, at all. Visually, it just looks very poor. Like, compare it to something like Cloud Top Cruise, and you'll know what I mean. It just looks so distractingly ugly in my opinion, and nothing that's being done on this track hasn't been done before and been done better by other tracks, so really, I'm just not a fan. Going back to saying I might dislike Whimsy and Wonder, I genuinely feel like a Grinch ranking Merry Mountain this low, but I just don't like this track. Like, I don't know, I don't think it's bad. Like, I really don't. I don't dislike driving on it. We're at that point in the list already, but there's nothing too exciting here except for the fact it's Christmas, and Christmas is cool. Maybe it took longer than you guys expected, I don't know, but we're talking about our very first city track, and I think it's universally known that Tokyo Blur is the worst one. And it's really sad because it's Tokyo. It's like the city on Earth, and this is by far the worst one. But I'm going to get ahead of it and say that I actually am a fan of a lot of the city tracks, so don't be surprised when some are really high up on the rankings. But yeah, Tokyo Blur, just not a great track. Dry Desert is extremely dry and boring. Like, out of all the tracks they could have brought back in the original game even, they chose this one. It's just not right. Even like the water section they added isn't very fun or exciting, so yeah, not a huge fan. The idea of a Mario Kart course going through a Mario water park in the Mario universe sounds insanely cool. However, it just feels like this is kind of a dud on that concept. Like, we kind of get some of those vibes, but really not too much of them, and I don't think it really pulls it off very well. Nintendo really had so much potential with this track to go all out and make it like a haunted mansion kind of vibe, you know, like a Disney weird trippy sort of mansion with all kinds of twists and turns, but we spend most of it underwater and in the backyard, and it's not too exciting. So a lot of missed opportunities make this one pretty, you know, underwhelming. While doing research for this video, it turns out a lot of people genuinely love Grumble Volcano, and I'm sorry, I don't get it. I genuinely do not understand. The aesthetic is just so flat and boring to me, and the track's okay. Like, there's nothing really remarkable about it. I kind of like that it destroys itself as it goes along, but that's like such a small effect in the track. I really don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I just don't know what I'm missing. LA Laps is okay. The big thing is that I feel like it's sort of flat. Like, it does capture the California surfer vibe, in some areas, and it really does truly feel like LA. And then it also has that like oil refinery section that is just ugly and weird and gross, but for the most part, the track just genuinely isn't too exciting. I'm tempted to say there's only two people in this world, either those that love Baby Park or those that hate Baby Park, but I'm kind of indifferent. Like, I do like driving on it. I don't get upset when it comes up, and it can be a nice change of pace from literally every other track, but I also don't absolutely love it because it's just a circle. Like, I'm not going to hype it up too much. It's just a circle. We're going to do a bit of a lightning round of a couple GBA courses that aren't fundamentally wrong. There's nothing really bad about them. They're just a little flat, little standard, a little straightforward. They're kind of just, you know, Mario Kart tracks. And yeah, this one's included. Riverside Park, it's fun, cool aesthetic, good music, you know, good vibes, but nothing crazy. Very similar view to Riverside Park, we have Snowland, except of course this is a snow theme. But again, very generic Mario Kart layout. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but yeah, really, really standard stuff. And of course, similar things can be said about Mario Circuit for GBA. Again, it's fundamentally fine. I will point out that the graphics on this course look a lot better than a lot of the other GBA and Super Nintendo courses, so that's kind of nice, but I guess because it was like one of the originals, I don't know. Still, the course is fine. Mixing in a Super Nintendo track here as well with these GBA courses, we have Donut Plains 3, which again, very similar aesthetic to Mario Circuit for the GBA. Not a bad thing, just very similar looking tracks, and they drive pretty similarly as well. And the last of these little GBA tracks is going to be Boo Lake. I oddly like this one a decent amount. The track is just genuinely kind of fun to drive on. Nothing too spectacular about the aesthetics or how it's all put together, but I just kind of like how this one flows more than the other ones. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little conflicted when it comes to Excite Bike Arena. When it first came out way back in the DLC for Mario Kart 8, I loved this track. I thought it was so fun. It's kind of like a new and improved Baby Park. But the more I race on it, the less I like it more and more. You're kind of just doing a lot of tricks off of a lot of ramps. I'm still kind of a fan though, I can't lie. If I asked an AI to make a Mario Kart track, I'm pretty sure this is exactly what it would come up with. Like, it's extremely generic here, except the last like portion is really weirdly fun. Like the last like 2 turns feel kind of crazy, and that's fun. But the rest of the track, you can thank Chat GTP for making it. Part of me wants to be the contrarian that ranks Bone Dry Dunes really high, but I really can't bring myself to do it. I don't think the track is bad. I genuinely do not think this track is awful. It's just a little dry and a little lackluster, that's all. It's not awful though. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having a primarily underwater track in the game, but I just don't really find any excitement in it. Like, it's fine, it's harmless, it's sort of just there. Okay, who's ready for another really hot take? I don't like this track that much. Like, I think it's really fun. Like, the aesthetic of Squeaky Clean Sprint is amazing. It's so fun. It's so wonderful to be in. However, the track feels very discombobulated. Like, nothing really fits together to be very coherent. It feels messy, and overall, I'm just going to say it, I just don't think it's very well made or well put together. I think I like the idea of Ice Ice Outpost more than the actual track itself. Like, doing a 2-track course with them intertwining everything is a really cool concept, and they do it a decent first try at it here, but I think they could have pulled it off a lot better. Is it just me, or do I feel like I've been racing on Sweet Sweet Canyon for like 10 plus years? I know this game has been out for a very long time, especially the classic Mario Kart 8 tracks, but this one specifically, I'm just kind of over it. I don't know if this is just a random thing with the aesthetic. It's like too much sugar overload to my head, but I'm a little bit over this one. I don't know why this one specifically gets to me. Okay, here comes a very scorching hot take that I might get absolutely roasted for, but I am not a huge fan of Ninja Hideaway. I do think the aesthetic is fun. I do think the track overall is a good time. I just kind of have similar complaints like I did with Squeaky Clean Sprint, where it just feels kind of messy all over the place, not very well put together. I know, don't kill me. Maybe it's something with the translation from Tour into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I don't know what it is. It just feels kind of messy at times, and yeah, I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on this one. Now, Sugarland is ranked sort of low, but I do want to emphasize that we are already at the point in the list where I don't really strongly dislike these tracks. This is all the C tiers. We're getting close to B tiers here. This is a pretty decent track, all things considered, but of course, not my favorite and somewhat low on the list for a reason. As someone that absolutely loves Mario Kart Double Dash, I was a little upset to see that this was the final track they selected to bring back to the game. It's not awful, but I just feel like the aesthetic and the vibes of a stadium course like this has been done enough times, and especially already been done a couple times in Mario Kart 8. And one of the times it's also done is in Wario Stadium. Yeah, these tracks are pretty similar to one another, and not like in a bad way at all. They're not like copying one another, because they do play a little bit differently, but the aesthetics and everything just kind of hit very similarly, and it's kind of a toss-up up between the two, which one's better, which one's worse. They're ranked essentially almost as a tie. And kicking off our B tier is going to be Peach Gardens, and I am genuinely so excited that this is in the game. I have so many nostalgic memories, not on the DS version of this, but the Wii version of this track, and the fact they actually did a little bit different stuff and twisted it so you actually drive backwards on the last lap is pretty fun. Again, with that said, it's not like the best track of all time, but still, it is a pretty fun and kind of charming and nostalgic track for me. In a similar way, we have the nostalgic course of Daisy Circuit returning in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this was one I was definitely pulling for in the Booster Course Pass, and now that it's here, I'm like, oh, yeah, this track was fine. Like, I like it, and it's not bad, it didn't get worse over time, but I just think I kind of overhyped it a little bit in my head, because now that I'm playing it again, I'm like, oh, sure, it's solid enough. The big gimmick of Toad's Turnpike is that you are driving in traffic with a lot of other cars on the highway. However, there's now been so many tracks that do this, besides just this one in Mario Kart 8, and this one just unfortunately seems to be one of the worst, if not the worst of them. And a track that does this gimmick infinitely better is Moonview Highway. I'm still not a huge fan of the traffic courses like this one, but I do like this one quite a bit more. And another traffic course to talk about is actually Berlin Byways. Yeah, this one actually has a ton of cars on this track as well, and it makes it a very unique city track for that. And also, one of the harder ones. Surprisingly, this track actually gave me quite a bit of troubles in the time trials and things like that, so this is definitely a more challenging tour track, and I actually kind of like it for that, so shout out Berlin Byways of all things. I think the track speaks for itself when I just say that this is in fact Moo Moo Meadows. Like, I don't think I need to really explain myself as to why this is ranked sort of high, and also really low, because like, it's Moo Moo Meadows. It speaks for itself. I feel like we've already talked about like 50 different Mario circuits, but now we have the Mario circuit for Mario Kart 8, and honestly, I like this one kind of a lot. It's just a really fun, chill vibe, you know, the figure 8 going on the anti-gravity and everything. It's kind of iconic for a reason. I just generally think it's pretty solid, and of course, not a crazy good course. It's in the 60s still, but an iconic one for a reason. I definitely think that Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road gets way too much hate. Of course, it is the very first Rainbow Road out of like 4 or 5 of them that I'm talking about so far, but it's generally not bad. It's really not too bad of a course at all, and it can be kind of fun and just as chaotic as the other Rainbow Roads for sure. Now, my initial take of this track is that it was a little bit too similar to something like Sherbert Land of all things, where it's a little bland and disappointing. However, every time I've raced on it recently, I'm starting to like it more and more. So this track definitely has something special about it. I just think it needs a little bit more time to grow on me personally. Now, I know we're in the B tier and we are talking about tracks that I do genuinely like in this game. However, I think people probably expect Electrodome a lot higher than even this, because people love this track, and I do as well. I do actually genuinely think this track is a very fun tempo and vibe. Of course, the electronic EDM dance music and everything going crazy is really fun. However, I definitely prefer something like Music Park over this. I think it sells the vibe even more than this one, and this one, I don't know. I don't dislike it. I really don't, but it just doesn't hit exactly the same. Okay, who's ready for another lightning round? This time we're talking about city tracks, and first off we have Sydney Sprint. This one is solid. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, but I do actually like this city tracks more than I think most people do. I think it's kind of fun to bring in real life locations to Mario Kart and just kind of put a Mario spin on everything. It's just kind of an interesting idea, and I think it actually does it decently well. The tracks are very, very unique to everything else we have in the game, and Sydney Sprint is a pretty solid one at that. And of course, Madrid Drive being one spot higher means that I like it slightly better as well. This one, very similar kind of aesthetic and vibe, mix of a outside feel in a city area sort of thing. However, I do think there's some more interesting areas in the Madrid track, and I just generally like it just a tad bit better. And to wrap up this trio, we have New York Minute, which I actually like this one because not only just the vibes of being in New York City, I love driving through Central Park, but it also just feels like this layout actually works really well as a Mario Kart track. Yeah, all things considered, I really do enjoy doing things like time trials on New York Minute more so than a lot of the other city tracks. Again, it's not crazy. It's not blowing the other ones out of the water, but I do like this one for a little shout out. Taking a short break from our city track world tour we're talking about Choco Mountain and Choco? I'm not entirely sure. Anyways though, this is one I've actually never really played before until this game, and I actually like the vibes of this setting a lot. Of course, it's not anything graphically crazy or beautiful, but I kind of like it. It's very just subtle, simple, and the track itself is pretty fun to drive on. I can still so easily close my eyes and teleport myself back to 2014, plugging this game in for the very first time on my Wii U, and just being amazed by just how beautiful this game was based entirely on this track. And this track still, to this day, looks phenomenal. It is so cool and a fantastic introduction to the entire game. It's beautiful, it's fun, and I really am a huge fan of it. mostly because of nostalgia. Track-wise, it's okay. Like, there's nothing crazy about it. It just sort of goes, and it's pretty standard to introduce this game to you. But, you know, nostalgia-wise, it is up there with one of my favorite gaming memories ever. I actually learned recently there's actually a pretty big community of cheeseheads that absolutely love Cheeseland and Mario Kart 8. And honestly, I'm starting to get it. I know that we're still only at the top 50, but we're getting into tracks that I really do like the layout of this one quite a lot. Of course, the cheese aesthetic is fun. It doesn't really hit entirely well for me personally. Like, I still kind of look like it as a desert, but still, I'm starting to grow a lot on this track, even, you know, a couple years down the line. And like Cheeseland, the layout of DK Jungle is just downright solid. Like, it's a really fun, well-made course. Not really much to complain about, but at the same time, not a lot to get really, really hyped about in my personal opinion either. Nothing in here is blowing my mind. Nothing is inherently bad, but nothing here is, again, blowing my mind. Kicking off the top 50 with none other than London Loop. And yeah, you guys are probably a bit surprised why this one is separated from the other little burst of city tracks I just did a little bit ago, but this one generally has a really fun layout. I actually enjoy racing on this one pretty much every time it comes up online, and it's very surprising because, like, London is not a city I particularly like or enjoy. Not to be mean, but other cities are more interesting, and this one is sort of not my go-to, but still, I can't deny the track is actually pretty genuinely fun, and it's kind of weird for that. The easy thing to do would have been to group Shroom Ridge with those other traffic tracks, but I actually admittedly like Shroom Ridge quite a bit more. I just think the track layout lends itself to being pretty fun almost every time I race on it. Again, it is a traffic track, and I think I mentioned I don't love those, but I do like this one's layout quite a bit more. I really do like Wario Goldmine. I think it is kind of a fun, creative course, and a lot of people think this one is actually pretty hard as well. And yeah, I sort of agree. I can have some tough races on this one, but overall, it's solid enough for me. Nothing really too stand out here, but overall, I do enjoy it. I love the vibes of Cheep Cheep Beach. I think they just absolutely nailed a tropical kind of beach theme on this track. It's weird we don't have more of these. It feels like this is the one and only beach track we have in this entire game, and it's pretty good at it. There's that weird, really opened up section, which is a little strange to drive on, but overall, I do like Cheep Cheep Beach. I'm a little scared to talk about Sunshine Airport because I know people absolutely adore this track, and I do like it. Don't get me wrong, I do like it. I do think it is a bit overrated. The theming is very fun, but it's kind of like, oh, fun, they made an airport for Mario Sunshine, and then that's the entire theming, and the track itself is fun to race on, but I think they could have done a little bit more with this idea, maybe flying around, airplane, I don't know. It could have been a little bit more in my personal opinion, but again, maybe I'm just a hater, I don't know. Mario Kart 8's Bowser Castle is a pretty solid track. It doesn't do anything crazy or mind-blowing where I absolutely love a certain section or anything like that. It's just an overall solid course. Like, it's fun, the aesthetics are cool, but again, nothing to really sell it as like a huge fan favorite for me personally. Now, I want to be careful not to give too much credit to Super Nintendo's Rainbow Road because, again, this track isn't anything crazy. It's a pretty straightforward, flat layout, and if it wasn't for the Rainbow Road aesthetic, it'd probably be a lot lower on the list, but it is still a Rainbow Road, and it's kind of fun to look back on the classic Rainbow Roads and see how far we've come in the entire game, but still, the track itself is sort of fine. Rome is definitely one of the sleeper hits of the city tracks in my personal opinion. I really like the aesthetics of it, of course, driving around the ancient architecture of Rome, the nighttime setting. I think everything kind of works really well to make this a little bit more of a standout compared to a lot of the other city tracks. So I have a theory this one might actually end up being a bit of a sleeper hit in the future. And one that I don't really see as a sleeper hit, but more of a you either love it or you hate it, is Paris Promenade. Of course, this was the very first city track introduced to us in Mario Kart 8. And I think this is where most people kind of made up their decisions if they liked these tracks or not. This is kind of like the baseline for all of them. And I personally liked this track when it came out. I still like it to this day, and I just think it's kind of a cool vibe. Super Bell Subway is definitely one of the harder tracks of the entire game, and I mean that as pretty much a compliment. I think it's a nice change of pace. It's chaotic, it's crazy, and I kind of have to lock in whenever I play it. Like, okay, I gotta focus up, don't get absolutely annihilated by a subway. That's embarrassing. It may have just happened on the screen, but I like this track, I really do. But again, sometimes it's a little too chaotic, and like, I just want to go for a race. I don't want to battle subways. In a track where I really do feel like I'm just, quote, going for a race is the Royal Raceway. And yeah, this one is just a very straightforward, easygoing vibe. Of course, it just kind of feels like another circuit course, but the layout feels natural, smooth, fun, very straightforward, very simple. Of course, that doesn't mean it's doing anything crazy, but I do like it. The aesthetics, everything are kind of working together, and I like this course. I think N64's Rainbow Road is one of the more overlooked tracks in the entire game, especially the aesthetics I just think are really fun. They kind of nail the theming of being kind of nostalgic because it's Nintendo 64 Rainbow Road, but at the same time also being kind of modern and fun. The track itself, is okay. Honestly, it's been pointed out that it's pretty flat. Not really too much is happening here, and ever since I realized that, I've started to like this track a little bit less and less, but still, I am a fan of it compared to a lot of other people. I think Piranha Plant Slide is one of those 50-50 courses where sometimes I feel like it's the greatest course of all time. I enter like a flow state where I'm just driving on this thing perfectly, and then sometimes I feel like I'm the worst Mario Kart player of all time on this thing. I think it is that water that pushes you along the entire track, which honestly, I'm a huge fan of that mechanic. I think it's really cool in all the tracks it's on, including this one. So I really am a kind of a fan, but maybe it's the tight corridors that make it so crazy. I don't know. Sometimes I'm just not feeling this one. I think all the little additions and tweaks they did to Calamari Desert really go a long way to make this one of the more interesting retro tracks that they've brought back. Sure, the aesthetic is still not fantastic, but I do like driving on this one quite a bit. I'm about to make a very dumb pun, but I will be saying that Rock Mountain is an extremely solid course. Like, it's not anything crazy. There's no parts of this track where I'm like, this is the greatest track of all time, but I do actually like this one way more than I expected to the very first time racing on it, so I gotta give it a huge shout out for that. The paraglide sections are extremely fun on this one as well. The one thing I will say is that there's still so many mountain tracks at this point in time that it's a little bit overdone, I won't lie, but this one still is, for lack of a better word, solid. Toad Harbor has always been one of the most consistently fun courses in all of Mario Kart 8. I think it's a bit of a sleeper hit, honestly, at this point in time. I think people always saw it as like, oh, this is a solid course, but at this point in time, I think we can finally acknowledge that it belongs in the A tier. Yeah, it's not the most insane track of all time, but it's so consistently fun, and I really am a fan of it. A couple years ago when Dragon Driftway came out, I considered this one of my favorite tracks ever. For some reason, it's been slipping a lot, and I think it's just because I've noticed there's not really many interesting obstacles on the course. Sure, it's an interesting layout, and you drive in some really cool, fun turns, but I definitely don't hold it in quite as high regards as I used to. I think the big difference between something like this and Squeaky Clean Sprint or Ninja Hideaway is that Piranha Plant Cove really does feel like an actual track. You're driving along a solid, well laid out course, and not just kind of a jumbled mess like the other two, and I really like it for that. I think this one is very, very underrated for most people. I still don't absolutely love it, but I think this one is definitely going to be a sleeper hit for most people, and it will definitely grow on a lot of others. So I do get to be a bit biased in my own video and say that Amsterdam is one of my favorite cities on Earth. Like, it's one of the best places I've ever traveled to. The city is beautiful, and a lot of places on this map were very, very recognizable, and it's just really cool to drive through any Mario Kart course. And even besides my biases, I do think that this course actually just drives very well, even compared to some of the other city tracks we've already talked about on the list. I have been waiting for a Bowser's Castle to return in this game the entire booster course pass, and we finally got one, and it's the Super Nintendo version. I was definitely not very excited. And then I played it and I realized, oh wait, they actually went all out and made this a very enjoyable track. I love all the anti-gravity sections, all the different mix-up and how it drives. It's very wonky and kind of messy, but in a really fun, chaotic way, exactly kind of what a Bowser's Castle should be. This one definitely made me eat my words. One of, if not the most nostalgic course in the entire game might be Daisy Cruiser for me. I remembered playing on my GameCube as a pretty young kid, driving around on the time trials with my friends and just exploring every single inch of this cruise ship because I thought it was so fun to be on a cruise ship in the Mario Kart world, and it still is very, very fun. Is the track anything mind-blowing? No, but it's arcadey and it's fun, and I still absolutely love it to this day. Vancouver Velocity is the go-to track to convince people that not every city track is the same. This one is extremely unique, and I feel like I discover something new on it pretty much every time I race on this track. I think it is so fun. There's so many fun little sections that are very unique to this course. I am a really, really big fan of this, and absolutely one of my favorite city tracks in the entire game. I'm happy to have it in the top 30. Oh my goodness, I forgot just how chaotic this course is, and I am so happy it's back into this game. The mushroom section where you're bouncing on 1,000 different mushrooms in the middle of the cave is just as crazy as I remember. Sometimes it feels really great, sometimes it feels awful to play on, and that's exactly what makes it so chaotic and so fun. As someone that never played Mario Kart DS growing up, I know, don't kill me, I cannot believe that Tick-Tock Clock was a DS track because it's so intricate and so interesting. I feel like there's no system that can handle this besides the Nintendo Switch. I guess I may be giving it a little bit too much credit, but still, this is a really fun course with some really creative ideas throughout the entire thing. Once again, I'm going to be calling out pretty much every city track hater and pretend that Bangkok Rush was called something like Toad's City or something dumb like that. I don't know, but this track is really fun, unique ideas, fun sections, especially that like 90-degree turn car parking lot thing. What the heck, that's so cool, and driving around in like the little market areas. I'm a huge fan of this one. I know I keep gloating over these city tracks, and I feel like the one and only person that likes them, but I really like this one as well. I mentioned Music Park a long time ago when talking about Electrodome, but I just think that Music Park does everything so much better, and it's so cool to have it in the top 25, because this one's a vibe. Like, this one just feels more naturally fun and coherent, and just the entire thing flows together like an entire rhythm. I know that most people say that Electrodome does that as well, but this one I just think flows so much better. Everyone's kind of like bopping to the music and the driving on the piano. Everything just works so well here for me. I actually get like a low-key adrenaline rush playing this track because it is just so fun to drive through, and it is kind of chaotic, I won't lie. Some of the jumps and everything feel a little iffy, but in a good way most of the time. Yeah, this one definitely feels like I'm actually playing something like an SS Tricky kind of game where I'm really skiing down an entire mountainside. Very unique, and even stands out next to a lot of the other mountain tracks, and yeah, there's a lot of them in this game. It's in the A tier, it's top 23. That's a pretty good spot for Waluigi Pinball. I completely agree that this track is so much fun. The turns at the beginning are really fun, the atmosphere is very unique, very creative, and I absolutely see why this is such a huge fan favorite. However, I don't really see why people are putting this in the top 5, top 1 spots of their own personal lists, because I do think it's really fun, but I just feel like there's so many other tracks that are just doing a little bit more for me personally that I absolutely love them. Again, I love this track. I think it's fantastic. I really don't have too many complaints about it, but there's other tracks I just happen to like more. So hopefully this is a decent enough spot for most people for Waluigi Pinball. Like a lot of the other original Mario Kart 8 tracks, I feel like I've loved Cloud Top Cruise for a very long time, and yeah, I still really like this track. The entire thing is just so well put together, like even regardless of the theming, it's just a well-made track that's really solid and fun with some interesting moments, but then the theming really sells it. Like, compare this track I mentioned at the beginning of the video to Sky Garden, and you'll see why I absolutely dislike that track and love this one. The theming is just done so well here, and I think it's such a fun track to drive around on. I could really praise this thing for a while. I mentioned that I love Cloud Top Cruise since pretty much the launch of Mario Kart 8, but Thwomp Ruins has kind of been a sleeper hit for me. Like, I liked it ever since the beginning, but it's only recently where I've really put together all the pieces of just how much is going on in this track and how interesting it is, even from like the theming to the actual course itself and how it plays and the interesting little dynamics on it, that I've come to realize that this is just a consistently fun and well put together course. Animal Crossing does a phenomenal job of actually capturing the vibes of, you know, Animal Crossing. It's just a really cozy, well put together, well-rounded track with nothing too crazy, like obstacle-wise or anything like that. But regardless, I still think that it is such a fun, well put together course, and I think the different seasons when you play on it are really fun, even though winter is by far the worst one. It looks really nice, but I hate driving in the ice. I was definitely really excited for Koopa Cape to come back into this game, and then it came back and I realized, oh, I really love this track. It is just so well-rounded with so many different sections. And I think I mentioned earlier, but like driving down a flow of water is so fun. I'm a sucker for that mechanic. I don't know why. I guess just going fast is fun. I mean, duh, yeah, of course it is. I feel like this course just has so many consistently fun pieces on it that I can't help but rank it pretty high. And who would have thought that another track where you're racing down some water is really high up on my list? Yes, I am a sucker for this mechanic, I know, but this track overall is just really solid, like well put together, really fast driving, but also a really fun environment as well. I remember this track coming out in the original Mario Kart 8 DLC, and I was like, this feels like Mario Kart 9. Like, just everything going on in this track is so aesthetically pleasing, it's well put together, it flows really nicely. I felt like I was playing the next iteration of Mario Kart, so more tracks like this would be phenomenal. It's kind of interesting to compare something like Wild Woods to Maple Treeway because they're very similar aesthetic-wise, but I definitely would say that Wild Woods looks nicer, and it's newer, and it's a new iteration of everything. But then this is a classic Wii track that really stands the test of time, in my opinion. Like, there's so many fun little shortcuts and ways to drive around this track, and again, it does look very nice as well. It's just super fun. So yeah, you know, maybe in a couple years down the line I'll be nostalgic for Wild Woods the same way I really hold Maple Treeway in such high regards, but for right now, slightly better, maybe just because of nostalgia, I don't know. I still love the track. And another super classic Wii track, we have Coconut Mall. Yeah, definitely working on this video at first, I expected this one to be in the top 10 even, and it's just missing out on the top 15, but don't get me wrong, this track is still super fun. I know some people have their own gripes with this iteration of Coconut Mall, but I still find it extremely fun and just a really good vibe all around, regardless of nostalgia or not. We have finally made it to the top 15 of the best tracks in this entire game, and all of pretty much Mario Kart Kart history, these are all my S tiers from here on out. First off, of course, is Neo Bowser City. This track is so difficult. I love that we have such a difficult and challenging course that is not a Rainbow Road. Feels like something that we're driving inside a Blade Runner movie. It's just so cool. The environment is so fun, so unique. The rain is a annoying but fun mechanic to make this such an interesting and standout track. I think this one is super, super good, and I think people really overlook this a lot with these discussions. In case you haven't put it together throughout this entire video of playing Yoshi and driving on the Yoshi bike, I'm a Yoshi fan, yeah, obviously, and having a track that is in the shape of Yoshi is pretty fun. However, the track is also just kind of phenomenal. Like, it just races very, very well, and it's hilarious. The entire time is just an outline of Yoshi, but all the turns work really, really well. All the environments and sections are really fun as well. Probably by far my favorite circuit track in the entire game, and again, a little bit of bias, but at the same time, you gotta admit that this track just works phenomenally well, despite of, seeming like it just shouldn't. So I've come to learn that a lot of people actually strongly dislike Athens Dash, which is very surprising to me because I think this track is so cool. Like, there's so many fun, unique sections of it, and it drives very differently every lap. And not to mention that this is a city track. Yeah, believe it or not, that this is actually one of the city tracks. It does not seem like you're on a city, but it's actually driving through some architecture. And again, I'll bring up the same argument where if this was called like Shy Guy Ruins or something, no one would bat an eye, and this would probably be considered a lot better of a track than people actually see it as right now. And yeah, this one's just really fun. I do understand some of people's complaints about it. There's some kind of awkward sections where you have to like drive through such narrow passageways and things like that. So I get it, but at the same time, I just think it makes it stand out to be a very unique course for sure. After seeing DK Summit make it into the booster course pack, I was legit worried that DK Mountain was just not going to be included at all because they're like too similar or something. But no, we made it. DK Mountain is in this game finally, and I am so happy for it. This one is such a classic for me. I remember playing this one all the time way back on the GameCube, of course also on the Wii version as well, and thankfully it is in Mario Kart 8. I think it is by far my favorite mountain track. I know there's 1,000 of them, but this one just feels very unique and distinct, and I love it, and I'm so happy that it's here and it plays as well as it does. Shy Guy Falls really makes me want a new open world Mario game so badly. The environment here just feels way too perfect. The Mario universe feels alive and lived in, and it's just is such a cool area to drive around and like explore. And yeah, the track is also phenomenal. There's some really, really cool moments here as well. Takes great advantage of the anti-gravity. I think this is definitely one of the better original courses included in the base game of Mario Kart 8. And I think this one is absolutely a top dog contender for one of the best tracks in the entire game. I'm going to go ahead and warn you right now that my top 10 is definitely going to be a bit controversial. Of course, starting things off with that is Rainbow Road for the Wii being at number 10 and not like number 1. Again, it's top 10 out of like 90 plus tracks, and this is one of the greatest Mario Kart tracks of all time. Do not get it twisted. I adore racing on this thing. It is so fun, so smooth, everything flies together really well, and it is absolutely one of the best Rainbow Roads we've ever gotten. It's crazy, it's chaotic, it's fun. I am so glad it's here, and I think it was an absolute perfect choice to wrap up not only the Booster Course Pass, but also like the entire game and history of Mario Kart leading into what is going to come next. I think this was the cherry on top. I think it's great. I'm so happy it's here, and I'm so happy it plays so well. Okay, look, I'm not naive enough to think that I'm not going to get called out for the Yoshi bias once again here, but trust me, I love this track regardless if it was Yoshi, it could be Birdo, who I absolutely hate Birdo, but it could be a Birdo track, and I would love this one because there are so many split paths going on in this track. I think it's so interesting and so well put together. Very surprising that this is actually a Nintendo 64 course. Like, are you kidding me? I don't know how they pulled this off way back when the Nintendo 64 was around, but they actually crushed it once again here in this version on the Switch. I think it's really great. I love this track, and I understand that the Yoshi bias looks bad, but trust me, I think this track is great regardless. So when I mentioned that my top 10 is going to be controversial, I think this is definitely part of the reason why, because yes, I have a city track in my top 10 and ranked very, very highly. I absolutely adore Singapore Speedway. There are so many cool sections of this track that make it stand out, not only as a city track, but also as like the entire game. There's so many cool parts of this, so many different unique and interesting areas, and the aesthetics of this track are great as well. Not to mention this is like one of the best Mario Kart songs of all time. It's just so good all around, and I love racing on this thing to death, and I cannot pretend that it's not one of my favorite tracks in the entire game. I genuinely cannot believe that we have a Zelda track in a Mario game. I know it's been here for a while now, but just think about that for a second. That is crazy. It just shows what kind of crazy era Nintendo is in right now, and I think it is so cool. I can't imagine how difficult it was to craft a Zelda track that works in the Mario Kart universe, but they absolutely crush it. I think it is done very, very well. Even has like a puzzle section. You drive through like a Lost Woods kind of section with Zelda enemies and the Zelda castle. It's not doing anything like crazy, but I just think it was a really tough thing to balance, and they ended up pulling it off very, very well. So I gotta give them their props for that. It is done so well. And we have another themed franchise track with Yoshi's Island. Yeah, this was definitely a huge surprise in the Booster Course Pass. I did not really think we were gonna get an original track like this at all. Like, this is so cool, and the theming is done very, very well, even if I'm not the biggest Yoshi's Island fan. I know that's ironic. I've been talking about Yoshi the whole video, but I'm just not the biggest fan of that franchise. But regardless, the track is really cool, solid layout, really fun design, everything just works together super, super well. I know I'm definitely not alone in this opinion, so I'm not going to pretend like I had some revelation in realizing that 3DS Rainbow Road is actually the best one, but it is. Like, this track is so solid. There are so many different unique sections throughout the entire thing. Of course, my biggest complaint with it is that there's some portions that just seem kind of random, like a random mushroom in that random tunnel just aren't very aesthetically pleasing. But besides that, if we look past all that and just drive on this course, it is so fun. The sections work very, very well. Driving around the rings of Saturn are so cool. It feels like a space track, a Rainbow Road that really deserves the title to be like the Rainbow Road. And I just think it is so well done. Huge fan of this one. I know a lot of people are, but I'm included for sure. Surprise, I made a new tier on the tier list. Yeah, we're talking about the SS tracks, the S+, whatever you want to call it. These are the 4 best tracks, not only in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Booster Course Pass, whatever. These are the best tracks in all of Mario Kart history. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I absolutely adore these tracks, especially, of course, the F-Zero tracks like Mute City that I'm talking about right now. It has that section where you're driving in the anti-gravity and the road like twists in front of you. The whole time you feel like you're going 1,000 miles per hour, which of course is the whole purpose of F-Zero. It absolutely crushes the adrenaline rush of those games. The whole track layout is just so unique, so fun, the setting, everything. I could talk about this track for hours. I love it. I think it is done absolutely perfectly. I think it is so, so good. And we also have to shout out the Mute City OST. Oh my god, this is one of the best songs in all of Mario Kart history, gaming history. I don't care what you want to say, this song is nuts. Admittedly, Ribbon Road being in the top 3 has to come down to the theming and just the fact that this was originally a GBA course that they took and made one of the most aesthetically pleasing and interesting tracks in Mario Kart history. If not the most interesting track to drive around on and look around at in Mario Kart history. I still just cannot genuinely believe that this was a GBA track. Oh my goodness, like, look around at this thing. It's crazy. On top of that, also, the course is just so, so solid. And yeah, it doesn't have any portions that are, you know, 1 in a million unique. How did they think of doing a track design like this? It is still just so consistently solid and so fun and just so easy and pleasant to drive on. It has very nice, simple shortcuts, very easygoing sections without anything crazy, while also not being like dull at all. Like, the entire time I'm having a great time on this track. So yes, I'm very, very happy and very proud to have Ribbon Road in the top 3 and the best retro course in the entire game, because believe it or not, yeah, this was a GBA track of all things. Going into this video, I think we all knew that Mount Wario was going to be ranked extremely high, and yeah, I'm not going to do some hot take and say that it's not that great of a track or anything, because it's phenomenal. It's amazing. It absolutely nails the idea of doing a continuous track. Every single portion of this, lap by lap, is so different. Every single section is very unique and creative. Everything is done almost to perfection here. Of course, some areas are slightly better than others and more fun, but consistently, this is hands down one of the most fun and interesting tracks that Nintendo has ever made, and I cannot wait for Mario Kart 9 or whatever comes next to see what kind of tracks they can kind of evolve this idea even further, because this is an insanely good proof of concept for these continuous track style courses. This is phenomenal. This feels great, and I really, really want to see more tracks just like this. And that means there's only one track in the entire game to talk about, and that is none other than Big Blue. Oh my goodness, I did not think they could top Mute City, considering how fantastic that was at displaying just how fun a game like F-Zero is and, you know, converting it into Mario Kart, but they topped it by a lot. How did they do it? By, of course, making a continuous track like they did with Mount Wario, and just absolutely crushing the formula like they did in Mount Wario, but actually doing it even better somehow in Big Blue. And yeah, I know there's a bit of a contention there, which one's better, Mount Wario or Big Blue or whatever. I think at the end of the day, it has to be Big Blue. This track, when it comes down to it, is just fun. Like, the definition of going fast, driving fast, adrenaline rush, everything you want to have in a fun, fast-paced Mario Kart course is here in Big Blue. The aesthetics as well look amazing, the music is amazing, the entire thing is just so fun to just drive on. There's a reason that this is the one clip where I'm using a time trial and not actually just racing in a normal Grand Prix or whatever, because this is an infinitely fun course just to drive on and try to get going as fast as possible, because it really gives you that adrenaline rush. This track in 200cc is insane. This is also footage of a 150cc, not even 200cc, and it feels like I'm flying across this thing. But yeah, this track, they absolutely crushed it. It's phenomenal. Best track in the game, best track in Mario Kart history, in my own personal opinion. And again, you guys can disagree with like my entire list, but this track is one of, if not the best in Mario Kart history. And there you have it. There are my rankings of all 96 tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in order from my least favorite to my favorite. This list is essentially impossible to make. You know, like any day of the week, I will probably have a different opinion on a track I like more or less than I did the day before. So yeah, this list is hard to make. Please go easy on me in the comments down below. I'm sure you guys will disagree with quite a few things that I said about a lot of different tracks, but regardless, I hope we all had fun and just love talking about Mario Kart, because yeah, this game had a very nice life cycle to it. We had 48 additional courses over the past year or so because of the Booster Course Pass, and I'm very thankful for that. Really glad this game had another chance at life and continues to be good, because yeah, regardless of new tracks coming or not, this game is still alive and kicking and very, very, very fun. So let me know your opinions on the rankings down below, along with any ideas you have for more Mario Kart videos. I definitely want to make a video talking about, you know, potential things from Mario Kart 9, Mario Kart 10, Super Smash Kart, whatever the next one's going to be. Let me know if you guys are interested in that. I'll probably make a video on that soon. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. More Mario Kart, more Nintendo, more anything. Check out the channel if you haven't. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time, and bye.